Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Grand Rapids Public Schools, the Grand Rapids Superintendent's Office, and the Celebration Committee, who's worked very, very hard for the last 8 months to put this on, you're all very welcome. We're welcome to have you here. We're glad you're here. And it was such a great thing to see everybody in the hallways today. Color Guard, would you please advance? Would you please stand up and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, now, please remain standing. We have a little surprise for you. We're going to check. How good is your memory? All right, you ready? You're not mic'd. Here.
Okay, there we go. Okay, the recording we have is very fast, so we're going to sing quickly. And I hope you're going to help me sing this, because I can't sing this thing myself.
That's a good
now, for you that don't remember, like me, we go through the whole thing, and then we come back down to Let's Beat That Old Catholic or whoever your nemesis is. So, now I'm saying, when this hits, it's fast. So we're going to sing very quickly. Get it.
That was invigorating. Rick did a great job, didn't he? Hey, Rick. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Mr. Larry Johnson.
Good afternoon. As he said, I'm Larry Johnson, the assistant to the superintendent. And on behalf of the Grand Rapids Public Schools Board of Education and the entire school district, just want to thank the Grand Rapids High School Alumni Committee for organizing this great event. And thank all of our Crescent High alumni and event goers for coming out today. Give yourselves a hand. You are just fabulous. I want to also recognize some of our board members that I've seen floating around, Shanita Lanier, our president, Dr. Tony Baker, Wendy Fobb, Jane Geetson, Reverend Kenny Hoskins, John O'Connor, Dr. Monica Sellers, and Renard Ross. Thank you, you guys, for what you do in trying to keep us on the straight and narrow. Interim Superintendent Teresa Weatherall-Neal was scheduled to be here today. Unfortunately, due to a family emergency, she was not able to join us. We just ask that you keep her family in your prayers this afternoon. as they go through some very difficult times with her mother. It is an honor and a privilege for Grand Rapids Public Schools to have you here today. We're celebrating the honor of celebrating the past, the present, and the future of Central High School. To our knowledge, Central High School is the oldest and still functioning high school in all of Michigan. 164 years ago, this building, which later became the first Central, was constructed at the corner of Lyon and Barclay. 144 years ago, Central High School graduated its first class, 13 females and the lone male who was fighting in the Civil War at the time. A lot has happened in these hallways since that time. Presidents have visited, and even one of those presidents was smart enough to marry a Central High graduate. There's been many records broken, stars been reached, lives changed, and history made. Now as we celebrate this 100th anniversary of this Central High School building, we come to a chapter in the history of this great institution. This year will be the last official graduating year of Central High School. However, it's going to be the first graduating class of the School of Health, Science, and Technology. While we may have come to an end of one chapter, a new page is turned. And the legacy and tradition of Central High School, though will live on at this building and on this campus because it will remain. One of the things that Superintendent O'Neill has said, and she said it publicly, under her watch, she will fight to keep this building open. And there's so many programs being housed in this building, programs that's going to transform lives in our community. The Grand Rapids Montessori, the first pre-K-12 public Montessori school in the country, and the School of Health Sciences and Technology. There's a School of Innovation here, which is partnered with Spectrum Health, Life Ambulance, and EMS, Van Andel Institute, MSU Medical School, GVSU, GRCC, and many, many more. There's a lot of community partners working hard to keep Central in the forefront of what our kids are capable of doing. While GRPS has faced some difficult but necessary changes in the last decade, Superintendent Neal wanted me to be sure that she is committed in the future growth and success of Central High School campus. In fact, thanks to the voters of Grand Rapids, this building here will be going some major renovations under the safe, warm, and dry bond millage that you, our citizens, were able to pass. Again, thank you to Central High School Alumni Committee who worked for the last 6 months planning to make this great event. Thank you all for coming out to celebrate. I've had an opportunity to talk with many of you. I've had an opportunity to sit and listen to the class of 47 and 48 as they talked about the state championship in football they won. And just as exciting they were in 1947 and 48, they are as excited today to be in this building and share this great event. Again, through the committee, thank you for putting this together. This is a great opportunity. Hope to see you around later today. Thank you very much.
Wow, great. Thank you, That was very nice. That, again, was very inspiring. About 6 or 8 months ago, I got a call from a young lady that I worked on committees with for, probably 4 years. And she had a vision about holding a celebration like this. And I'm going to let her share with you her vision of the celebration. Jan?
Thank you.
You be all right?
I'll be fine. Hi, thank you all for coming. What is it that makes Central Central? It's a question I've been asked many times over the years, and the answer's always been the same. We are family. In the old days, many students were here for 6 years. We came in here as scared, insecure, shy 7th graders. 6 years later, we walked out of this same building, diplomas in hand, hoping to make our mark on the world. We truly did grow up here. We learned much more than the 3 R's. We were taught respect for others and ourselves. We were taught and coached by the best. Many of those teachers themselves were Central High grads. As one of the numerous Central grads that have returned to spend part of their career here, I was privileged also to return here to spend 16 years in the counseling office as a secretary. I'll never forget coming back in 1989. It was deja vu, 1962 all over again. Little Jan, nervous, not knowing what to expect. But it wasn't long and I realized I was home again. The marble staircase, the teachers who were still here from my school days, hearing the school song again, and just being back home. That is the Central we are celebrating today. We wish to thank all the teachers and staff for supporting the students of Central High School for 150 years. Central was once described as the heart of the city, and in the hearts of its students it shall remain. I was asked yesterday about feeling nostalgic. That is certainly true. The magnitude of what was and always will be of Central will stay with many of us through our lives. As we close this chapter and begin another, we offer our hope and best wishes to those who follow, that they too will leave their mark on the world and remember that they were inspired by the best. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, for about 10 years in the 60s, I was blessed to have a place to hang out. It was called the Glass Hut. And Gus, it's all yours.
He's going to rue the day he got me up here. I'll tell you that. I'm not a speaker. But one day I got a letter. I open it up, and the letter quickly says, Gus, would you accept speaking at our celebration? No, I'm not a speaker. I don't want any part of it. I'll go to the reunion. So I set it aside on the desk, and a week goes by. And lo and behold, I open up the letter, and here's the first sentence. Dear Gus, thank you for accepting our request to be a distinguished people at the Central High School 150-year. What do you think he was doing? Anyway, I called him up. I say, hey, what's going on here? You trying to rope me in? He says, no. And he told me what happened. I'll give you 2 seconds as to try to figure out what happened. 1, 2. It seems like my wife saw that letter. And yes, she got to the telephone with a shot, called Jim up, and says, Mr. Hall, my husband would love to give you a spoon. Do I have to tell you who wears the pants in my family? So let's get on now. I got to go into another section. My 4 years here at Central, I don't want to go ahead. Okay. Okay, my 4 years at Central High School, one of the highlights of my life, because of the excellent teachers we all had, and I also loved to play sports, basketball, football, and baseball. Now, my favorite sport was baseball. And at one time, get a load of this, you won't see it anywhere else, nowhere, I promise you. My brother Sam was the catcher. My cousin Gus was the pitcher. Cousin Clark was second base. I was out in center field, right down that line, all Affendulises. All right. One item stands out of my baseball career, and that was one time we were playing Union High School. We're in the bottom of the last inning. I say last inning because I can't remember if we had 7 innings or 9 innings. But anyway, it was the bottom. We're behind 1 run. I was on third base, bottom half of the last inning. Sam was on second base. I can't remember who was on first base. Clark was the batter. Now, Clark was real good around second base, never let any ground balls get by him. But his slugging was bad. He'll even tell you that. But God bless him, he hit that ball and landed between the center field and left field, and we won the game. That was the end of that. Now, right now, I would appreciate it if all the students from my class, 1943, please rise for just a few minutes. I want to see you all. Come on. 1943. Don't be bashful.
Hey, Gus.
That's enough.
Why don't you have all the 1940 and 30 graduates stand up?
Oh.
All the 1930s and all 1940s.
All right. I've been just ordered. I've been married 66 years to my wife. I know how to take orders. Jim says, what year?
Right here.
What year? Tell him.
Okay. All right. I just whispered to Gus. Gus, why don't you have all the people that graduated in the 30s and the 40s, please either stand up, raise your hand or something. I'd love to recognize all of you. Thank you.
And if any of you have any hard time, just wave your cane. That's all. Oh, by the way, we had an advantage. We speak Greek. Sam and Gus were given signals all in Greek. For example, gligora means fastball, or sira means a slow ball. We had that advantage. Okay. Football was another sport. I don't know if you remember Coach Irwin, but he was about the team in good, I'm getting all tied up here. What I'm trying to say is he loved us all. And he used to have us every year in his basement to have a party. My cousin Gus was probably the best football player as a running back. He was known as Swivel Hips. I cherish those years. Now, let's go back to March of 1943. I went home and I got a letter from the government and from the Veterans Administration. In there they say, literally what they make it short, they drafted me. And they wanted me to report at Fort Custer. I said, God, I haven't finished my high school career. I would at least like my diploma. So I called them up and they were very gracious. They were very, very gracious. They said, Mr. Afandoulis, go ahead, finish your school. When you get your diploma, come on down. So that was it. Now, I report to Fort Custer. I'm going to take you through my lifetime, and we'll take you halfway around the world. Quick. I reported, got my exam, I was fine, and we were in line, and they were down there, all these sergeants punching, Army, Navy, blah, 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 blah. And when they came to me, they looked at me and they hit 483rd MPEG company. They were just starting up, about 120 soldiers. Now, MP is military police. We had nothing to do with the American soldiers. It's MPEG. It was an escort guard company, and we were trained to haul prisoners. Now, the hard part was this, that we went to Fort Custer, and you know, people, when we got, I'll get a little mixed up here. You got to forgive me for that. But people didn't even know we had prisoner of war camps here, or as early as that. In Arkansas is where I got my training. I crossed the Atlantic Ocean 3 times. One time, Winston Churchill was up on the upper deck. Oh man, and he's smiling, got his cigar in his business. He was going back to England from what happened here with President Roosevelt. Well, anyway, in some certain time, and I'm really not sure, because it's a long time ago, We finally got tied up with Patton's Third Army. Now, you remember, the best of my time with him is this incident that I'm going to tell you. When you remember Bastogne, the McAuliffes, they were surrounded. Patton volunteered us to go up and break the gridlock. And sure enough, we went up and broke the gridlock. Now, we're in there, and for the next probably 10 days that I can remember, it was raining, it was cold, it was foggy. But one day we were in bed, and we hear a big roar. We grabbed our guns, and we went outside, and as far as you could see, north, south, east, west, Allied airplanes, bombers and fighters and all, they literally leveled every city that we were going through. They had bulldozers to make roads for us to go. We broke out finally, and Patton, you know how Patton was. First of all, he wanted to go to Berlin, but they wouldn't let him. You're going south. So he went south. And the only thing that stopped us was we ran out of gas. We got gas. And war was over with pretty quick. So now we're jubilant. We're crying, oh, we're going home, we're going home. Staff Sergeant said, no, we're not going home. Where are we going? Where are we going? You'll find out. A few days pass by, he wakes us up. He says, all right, pack up, everybody. We're leaving. Where are we going? Japan. We all loaded on in Marseille, went through the Mediterranean, through the Rock of Gibraltar, across the Atlantic, through the Panama Canal, to Hawaii, and this will boggle your mind. When we get to Hawaii, there was a guard around the whole boat. No one could get off because a lot of people were jumping boat. So we stayed on the boat, loaded up, and we ended up north of Manila in the San Fernando Valley. And as all of you know, the atomic bombs eliminated us going in and fighting. We went up as the Army of Occupation. Now we're going home. So now I'm getting to the end of my speech, and I want to make sure I don't stutter around that. Okay, I said all that. Okay, all right. Oh, this ought to be easy. 6 months later, I got out of the Army and came back to Grand Rapids. I got married. I have wonderful 3 great children. Steve, who's a trial lawyer, one of the best in the state. Cynthia, she made films for advertisers. And then my daughter, Vicki, who's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Charity Equipment Rental, she raised a business she's the queen of the linens over there. I have a daughter-in-law, Dr. Bess Affandoulis. I don't know, maybe some of you know. She's a dentist right here over here in Reeds Lake. Cynthia's here, my son-in-law's in Raleigh. Here is where I started a business with my brothers. Affandoulis Cleaners is still around today, over 60 years. When I retired from the cleaners, I moved to Clearwater Beach. Oh, I gotta tell you a quick story about that. Oh, you're gonna love this. We went to vacation to Florida. I'm almost done, Bill. We went on vacation with my kids. I was there 2 weeks, and they stayed 2 weeks extra. I get a call. I'm in the Affandoulis working. This is my wife, and she says, Gus, yeah, Anna, I bought a house. You did what? I bought a house. Oh, good, I said. You stay down there, I'll stay up here. I want to say, one thing that I left out of the, well, here, there's one section I missed. I am so proud of what the community has become. The downtown, the medical mile, and all the great events. Grand Rapids is really built beautiful, beautiful. This high school gave me a great start. I hope kids today are as lucky as I was to have a good education, great teachers, and wonderful classmates. Jim? Yes, sir. You got me but I am proud to have accepted that speech. I am proud. One last statement. You may want to wonder why my wife is not here. She had a stroke. That's all I'm going to say.
I hope she's doing well. Thank you. Gus's wife actually called me about that house in Florida. I told her it was okay to go ahead and buy it. I didn't care. And the only other thing is, there's one thing he never taught me, was how to say, I want a double meat, double cheese Willy burger in Greek. I don't know how to say it.
I forgot it.
All right. Our next speaker. I had a chance to look at his resume, and truly, he's one of the most respected men that I know, and I'm fortunate to be on the committee with him, and he's an alumni. Dave, would you please join us?
Well, the last time I remember being right here, other than one intermittent stop, was the fall of 1951. It was our senior year. I was not playing football that year, and Sam Upton called me in his office, which was always a threatening thing. And he said, Dave, I would like to have you be the MC for our pep assemblies. Oh man, I thought, little kid from Coit School, what am I doing up there leading a pep assembly? But we did do some pep assemblies, and I remember that first one, Ralph Wells was a first-year band teacher. And any of you that were at Central from the fall of 1951 for the next umpty-ump years, remember Ralph Wells. They used to play, before Ralph Wells, they used to play the fight song. It sounded like a funeral dirge, right out of New Orleans. Ralph Wells came in, and the first thing he did is he revved that song, fight song up, and it was a revelation to 1,100 people, kids that were in this auditorium. There was absolute bedlam. We're looking at a situation now, incidentally, our class, my class, will be celebrating its 60th anniversary, graduation anniversary, sometime next month. We celebrated in the fall in September, but our graduation anniversary will be first part of June. I thought it might be kind of interesting. Central has had a long and storied career as a wonderful institution in this community. And as she transitions into another phase in her life, how about one last cheer? A couple of you are kind of nodding. I don't know if you're falling asleep or whether you're, but can all of you read this? What I'd like to do is count down to 1, and then I would like to hear it. No words to this cheer necessarily, it's just noise, kind of like after we scored a touchdown. Can all of you read this? There's some of you just can't wait to let loose on this one. But here we go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You bring tears to the eye. Hey, they were talking a few minutes ago about the glass hut. When I was in high school, the glass hut was still a gleam in Sam's eye. It had not taken form. And for those of us that looked for a place to hang out, we used places like the Ramblin' Inn over on Michigan, or Booth Dairy on Michigan, or the Booth Dairy on Fulton. They had the best malteds that were ever made in captivity. Whatever happened to real malteds? Along came McDonald's and everything became a milkshake, and a milkshake just doesn't quite cut it. When we went out for dinner, I'm going to reminisce a little bit. When we went out for dinner, we went to places, if you went upscale, you went to Fingers up on Plainfield, or Haddam's Chicken in the Rough on South Division, or if you got kind of fancy, you went to Holly's or to Safey's where they had white tablecloths. You remember that? Chicken in the Rough. Remember that little pails you put your fingers in after you ate your chicken? Those places were all on South Division except Fingers. And sadly enough, they're all gone. It's called progress, I guess, folks. Do you remember when downtown Grand Rapids had 9? That's this many. This many. I was a little slow in math, but we had 9 downtown movie theaters. Now, anybody that's saying, oh, that's somebody from after about 1960 when they started to disappear. And we all had our neighborhood theaters. You remember the East Town, the Vogue, and the Wealthy, and the Family over here on Michigan? Those were great institutions where on a Saturday you could go over for a dime, watch a double feature, and a harrowing serial that left you hanging until the next week. Do you remember those days? Some pretty special days, weren't they? I'm going to refer momentarily to my notes. We had a baseball team in town called the Chicks. What a great experience that was to go watch those young women play ball, and I mean, they could play ball. But do you know that the Chicks would never have passed the political correctness standards set today, but they were sure great in our day, weren't they? On Friday nights, those of you who had cars probably could be found somewhere down on Monroe, driving the loop, racing along at about 3.5 miles an hour. People could walk much faster than you drove, but it was a traffic jam Friday nights or Saturday nights, I guess. I don't really know because I didn't have a car and I was never down there, but I remember hearing about it. And there was a place, Ramona Park. You remember Ramona, what a great place that was back in our day? They had vaudeville out there. They had a little steam engine that took you around the grounds. And everybody remembers lurking the death-defying Derby Racer, where everybody screamed their heads off on that first big dip, or the SS Ramona. For a dime, you could ride that little Hummer all the way around Reed's Lake all day long. Then there was Lookout Park. I seem to have touched a sensitive note there, but now, what I remember about Lookout, I lived a block from Lookout Park. But Lookout Park was a place that everybody knew about, but no one ever admitted ever having been there. I lived out of Livingston, just north of Coit School, so you know it was about a 30-second walk from my house to Lookout Park. We used to play baseball up there in the summertime, down in the Sandburrs. You remember the Sandburrs? You guys that played on the baseball team. We had nice grass down there at Houseman Field for track, but anyway, up on the res in that depressed area, odd expression, but we'd take our bikes up there, play baseball until it got about dusk, and then we'd get on our bikes. And there were a lot of people parked up there, but they weren't watching us hit flies to each other. We'd get on our bikes and pedal around, and it was incredible the education one could get. I like to say that I learned things there that I never learned in the halls of Old Central High, that's for sure. But again, didn't have a car, so, well, what, so what. We all remember a lot of those great old days, and everybody getting back together at a place like this, at a time like this, gives us an opportunity to share with each other some of those tender, wonderful moments that we remember as kids. Something about coming back here, we're all kids still, right? In closing, and I'm racing ahead here, we were all fortunate, and this has been said already today, will be repeated again, I'm sure. We were all fortunate enough to have gone to school with a wonderful faculty that, although we didn't always appreciate it at the time, a wonderful faculty that instilled knowledge in us, gave us a lot of loving care as a faculty, and prepared us to step out of this institution as seniors and take our proper place in the community. We were pretty lucky, all of us. I just want to say thank you to all of you who are here today, and that comes from everybody that worked on this committee. It's been a great experience leading up to this. I hope you enjoy the rest of this afternoon and early evening. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks, Dave. That was great. Dave mentioned faculty. There's a few guys in this audience that would have never gotten out of this high school with a good grade in English if it wasn't for this next speaker. She is by far my most favorite teacher. Please welcome Mrs. Polium.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, good afternoon. Jan, you had a vision. Thank you for sharing it. Sometimes we get visions and we turn them off because we think they won't work. But this is an awesome occasion. And if you could be up here and look out there, you would know exactly what I mean. And Jim, thank you for sharing with me this opportunity to come today. When Jim called, I think you kind of heard another story similar to this. But when Jim called and he wanted me to speak, I didn't respond right away because I remember Jim from high school. And if you knew Jim, you knew that he had a good sense of humor, and you knew that he would make your day if you were a teacher in that classroom. Well, what he said to me was, you were my favorite teacher, so that got me because I remember that sometimes I was never anyone's favorite teacher. Not anyone that taught English was always a favorite teacher. So here I am. And it's wonderful to be in this building. It's wonderful also to remember that when I started my teaching career, I started it full-time at Central High School. I was on the 3rd floor, and my classroom was between Elmer Vrujink's classroom, and there was another new teacher, Barb Schumel, who eventually married Ed Prine. And the next year I graduated, I moved to the 2nd floor, to where the English teachers were. See, my first year I was between math teachers, so it was really very interesting. So I moved from 316 to 216, and I stayed there until I left to go to junior college. But something happened at Central High School, And I want you to know that when teachers get up to tell their side, it's always different from what students have to say. As a matter of fact, I learned some things today that students wouldn't have dared to tell me when I was in the classroom. But anyway, from the teacher's side, here's what happens. And I want you to forgive us for this if it happens to you. Whenever you see a teacher, someone says, you say, that was my old English teacher or my old math teacher. On today, I'm going to forgive you for that because celebrating something that has been around for 150 years can make you feel quite young. But I'll tell you what, if you notice, we do the same thing. We claim students. And sometimes teachers behave as though they own you after you graduate. And you might see a teacher with a friend or a member of a family or something, and that teacher will say to the other person, this was one of my students, as though that teacher were the only one you had. But you know what? I go better than that now. You see, what I do now is to claim grand students and great-grand students when I see them. Being at Central at the time that I was, under the regime of Romulus Romani, and I don't say regime lightly. Remember, I told you I started my teaching career at Central High School, and I started with him as the principal. And I would say that if my students grew from their experiences with me, I certainly grew from my experience with him. And I recall the day that I had to leave. I think on Mondays we went to department meetings, and we would meet with teachers from other parts of the city. So I had to leave to go one of those, and he wanted to know I had a group of students that was an interesting group. Jim, I don't know if you were in that group or not, but this was an interesting group. And the principal came in and said, well, you know, Pat, if you have to go early, go ahead, and I'll stay with your class. Well, that was the year that I thought, on that very day, that I would never be back. But you know what? I had the greatest students in the world. They were so good that when I came back, he said to me, I don't know what you did to them, but they knew everything they were supposed to do. I didn't tell them that they were scared. I didn't tell them that. But when I look at it, and I think about where we are now, and the fact that back in the 1960s, we had no idea that this school would be at the stage that it is and that it would be going through some kind of change. But it is, and change happens. But you know, the school is not the building. Central High School is not the building. Central High School is in the hearts of you out there. It's in the hearts of every teacher that has sat in a classroom behind a desk or stood at a chalkboard. That's Central High School. And better than that, Central High School happens to be all of the memories that you have of the days that you were here, those 180 days, or whatever number you had to come during that time. That's what Central High School is all about. So no worry, the name might change. The building is here, it might be renovated. The programs might be different, and so might the students, and so might all of those new partnerships that the district is developing for all of these schools that they now call centers instead of schools for some reason. I guess that's part of the change. Central is going to be here because you have so many memories. And as you continue to share them, my grand students and my great-grand students and my great-great-grand students will come to know what a wonderful school this was. There's a great heritage here. The program you have today reminds you of that as you look at the names of all of the well-known people that graduated. But more importantly, as you look at yourselves and the people that are sitting next to you who thought so much of this school that they would come back. And someone like Gus Alfendulis, who would come back after graduating in 1943, and Jim can ask for people who graduated in the 1930s to stand, and they're all here. That says something about this school. It says something about not only the teachers that were here, but it says something about a legacy in which we all share. I am grateful for the opportunity to have been at Central High School for the time that I did, and as I said, I learned a lot. Now, the greatest joy for any teacher is to know that when you have taught someone something at some point that they will remember it. Jim, would you please come up?
Oh, there's a couple of guys that can recite this with me out there.
Who's out there?
Bob Hirschfield's out there someplace.
Stand up.
Bob, are you there?
Bob,
Where
are you there? Come on. Are you there, Bob? Who else is there?
Oh, he's back here someplace. I heard him.
Oh, he won't stand now. But
Oh,
anyway,
no, okay.
You're
That's all right.
You're in it all by yourself.
Yeah,
okay?
that's fine.
Now, one of the things that I always wanted to do was to be sure that whatever we learned in English, whatever students learned in English, and myself included, I was learning how to teach it. That it always had to be not only easy, but memorable. So, Jim, when it was time for you, I won't look at him. Jim, when it was time for you to remember that sentences must have two parts, no matter how long they were, there should be someone that's doing something. What two words, Jim, do you remember?
I got this. Birds fly. Okay. Yeah! Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the first page. The second page was, what is the verb and what's the noun or something? And the answer was there in the second page. But it was good. That's what got us through English, so I'm really grateful for her. Please welcome Dr. Edlin from the class of '68.
Thank you, Jim. There are too many of you in here. Some of you have to go. Some of you aren't going to make it. By the end of the first marking period, you'll be out of here. Those are the words that I heard in my first hour 9th grade civics class on my first day at Central High School in September of 1964. Now, I had just been the valedictorian of Plymouth Christian School's 8th grade graduating class, and I'm feeling great angst about whether I was good enough, whether I was going to make it at this large public high school. Well, interestingly, Mr. Reagan, yes, the Patrick D. Reagan, although he had greeted us in such a formidable manner, he created a classroom environment where we were taught to work together on projects, we were taught to think and debate the issues, and to achieve as individuals and as a group. In fact, Jim and Sharon Flickinger from the Celebration Committee, they're still together over 40 years after learning in Mr. Reagan's family living class. Despite my initial angst, I graduated from Central High School in 1968 with several honors. But 1968 was a difficult year for our country. The escalating violence and casualties in Vietnam, the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy, racial violence throughout the country, the Chicago Democratic National Convention riots, and so on. But what I remember about our graduating class is that our relationships were generally respectful and cooperative among the students and the staff. Not just in spite of this turmoil in the country, but because of the turmoil, I think that we became closer in the structure and environment of our high school. I went on to become a teacher and a principal and ultimately responsible for the 4,000 employees of the Grand Rapids Public Schools as the Human Resources Administrator. I just share that because I want everyone to know that I attribute Central High School for laying the foundation for my entire professional career, 32 years of which was with the Grand Rapids Public Schools. And actually, my personal development was greatly influenced as well. Central High School welcomed me into a diverse environment where I experienced the value and beauty of our diversity. Yes, I did receive the Distinguished Alumni Award in 2004, which is a great honor. But I would like all of us to understand that we all, those here today and those not here, have each distinguished ourselves in many ways, some positive and some not so positive. But today, I ask that we not just celebrate, but that we take time to reflect and be grateful as we look into each other's eyes and listen to one another and just be together, that we realize that we are one. We are one. We have a oneness as human beings in this world. And that we just realize as we interact today that we're just experiencing another dimension of our oneness. Thank you, Central High School, and thank you, everyone.
I don't think anybody can get that day in 1968. She just mentioned something that made me remember exactly where I was, and I'm sure everybody remembers exactly where you were when you heard the word about President Kennedy being shot. And I can remember the room, Dr. King's, or Mr. King, I'm sorry. I can remember the room and the seat when I heard that message. The next speaker is Jose from the class of 2009. Thank you. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Wow. I've been here since 3 o'clock, and I was standing in the hallways, and I just saw your faces. I'm a baby compared to some of you guys. It's just I'm just in shock. I'm like, there was a class that far back. No insult intended. 150 years ago, a legacy was created here at Central High School. A legacy of tradition, heritage, of dreams, and just plain old fun. In 2005, I walked into these hallways as a freshman. 2005 doesn't seem that far ago now that I've seen 1947 and 30s. Wow, still can't get over that part. But one of the things I remember the most is that on some occasions I was the guy in the Ram suit. I don't know if you guys remember who it is. Rammy? No, anyone? Yes. Yes, I was the guy who danced around at the pep assemblies, or I was at the football game in the suit. And I believe a legacy not only is defined by age, but for me it was the mascot, because I was so close to the mascot. And so real quickly, I just wanted to name some characteristics that I learned from the Ram while I was here at Central High School. Some of those were power, force, drive, energy, protection, fearlessness, and yes, in some occasion, being hard-headed. I remember walking into these hallways, and then the freshman dean was Mr. Garner. I don't believe he's here today. If he is, no. I was a nerd. I had big glasses. I had the non-name brand clothing. And one of the advantages I did have was that my mom worked in the main office. So whenever I would get in trouble, I wouldn't fear the principal. I wouldn't fear the security guards. It was the clickety-clacks of my mom's high heels down the hallway. That was my punishment. But I loved being here. And one of the things Mr. Garner taught me about being a Ram is that if you can't dodge it, you ram it. And I literally took that to heart, because being a Ram, I learned that there's nothing I am not able to conquer. You see, something about the Ram is that the Ram is one of the few mammals that's able to get up into the mountaintops. You see, the Ram, with its 4 legs, is able to climb up very high and make it over that mountain, and I learned that I'm able to conquer that being a Central High School Ram. No matter what adversity, no matter what problem, because I was a Ram, I was able to surpass it. And you guys being here, that's another great example of surpassing adversity, trials, because you're Central Rams. I didn't want to take a lot of your time today because, again, I'm just a little chapter from not that long ago in Central's history. But I'm proud to say that I graduated in 2009 as a Grand Rapids Central High School Ram. Thank you.
From the current class of 2012, Esmelda? Did I pronounce that correctly? All right, I did well. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Esmelda Teo, and I have been asked to speak with you as a representative of the graduating class of 2012. I am happy to be part of this long and proud tradition, and I hope it continues for many years to come. Like many of my classmates, I am planning on entering the medical field either as a nurse practitioner or pediatrician. I realize these are challenging goals, but I have been on the honor roll for all 4 years of high school, and I hope to achieve the same level of success in college. Central High School has given me many wonderful experiences when I was a freshman and sophomore. I played the viola in the CH orchestra. I truly miss playing my viola with my fellow musicians because we had so much fun going on field trips with band members, performing on stage at the open house, and concerts at the festivals. Music influenced me to learn something different and challenging, and it kept my mind busy and inspired me to excel academically as well as musically. Our gymnasium is decorated with banners of many state championships, and it still echoes with the cheers of sports pep assemblies. And I hope these times will return when students can cheer for their classmates in black and gold yellow. Hopefully, music will come back to Central so future graduates can have the same experience so many of us have had over these past 150 years. Finally, on behalf of the class 2012, I wanted to thank all of the people who have helped us and inspired us on the path to graduation. They've been with us through the good times and the bad times. Class 2012, go Rams.
All right. Good job. That was great. Would you please welcome back Jan Zomberg for our dedication, please?
This is perhaps the greatest honor of my day. We are presenting the plaque for the Betty Ford Memorial to this auditorium, and Mr. Pat Sandro, another Central grad, will be doing that honor. Mr. Sandro is a 1956 graduate of Central High School, a former teacher and superintendent of Grand Rapids Public Schools. In 1990, he became our distinguished alumni. Mr. Sandro's children also attended and graduated from Grand Rapids Central and have done very well. Accepting the plaque on behalf of the Ford family today is Dr. Gregory Ford, nephew of Mr. and Mrs. Jerry Ford.
Thank you, Jan. I was given 5 minutes to talk about Betty Ford, but before I do that, let me add to the comments that have been made about gratitude. I did enjoy my time here at Central. My best friends, my best times really originated here. So when Barb and I looked for a house in Grand Rapids, we looked in the Central District because we knew how strong the faculty was. And let's be honest here, any teachers who could teach me to read and write and compute in 6 years have to be talented. And I think it was John Steinbeck who said the best thing that can happen to a person is in their lifetime they get 3 great teachers. Now, they don't all have to be classroom teachers, but I've had mine. Many of them were here at Central. And so I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for my children who did go on to get degrees and are serving people as Betty Ford did. So it's, with that 5 minutes they gave me, I've been reading biographies for about 10 years because people are really what make things happen. And So when they asked me to say a few things about Betty Ford, I went down to the public library. There are 4 books there, her autobiography and biographies, but I never thought I would read about such an interesting person. I never knew she was such an interesting person. Let me tell you just a few things about Betty Ford. She lived on Fountain, graduated in 1936, and I could say a lot of good things about her and pray take that whole time. She did not want to go to a college and get an academic degree. She wanted to dance. When she was asked, "Are you going to be a ballerina?" She said, "No, I could never keep my knees straight." And she became a modern dancer, an interpretive dancer, and she became great. She did go to school in Vermont because her dad was a salesman who made pretty good money, and they could send her. And she danced all over the country, danced at Carnegie Hall. She taught dance. She opened her own school. But some other things about her that were so interesting to me, she was very social. She loved the boys, and the boys loved her. And she was extremely personable, extremely social, and she joined she was in service clubs here at Central, and I think that contributed to what she became later. But she was in a group that was called the Happy, there's a restaurant named the Happy Somethings, and I thought as a parent, I don't know that I'd want my girl to be in a group that was called the Happy Cheers. But she was. Unfortunately, her father was an alcoholic, and he died when she was 16 while she was still here at Central. And her mother was a very strong woman. She was so strong that knowing her daughter wanted to dance, and knowing that her daughter loved fatty food, she loved cookies, donuts, and cake, and started to gain some weight, her mother then put a sign on her back which said, "Please do not feed this child." So she came from a strong woman, and she became a strong woman. And she called her marriage to her first husband a 7-year mistake, and because he was an alcoholic. And she moved back to Grand Rapids and met Jerry Ford. And Jerry Ford was persistent in chasing her, and why not? She was a model. She was a fashion consultant. She worked for Herpelsheimer's. Dave talked about the stores and the restaurants in Grand Rapids. There were 2 big stores here in Grand Rapids, Herpelsheimer's and Wurzburg's. Today you've got Macy's and Kohl's and all these, but she worked much of her pre-marriage life with Herpelsheimer's. And she was successful, and she made good money. When she married Jerry Ford, she had 4 children in 7 years. And she became very busy, of course, moving them around. And Jerry wasn't there. He was an absentee father because he was so busy with affairs of the state. And she was back where she was with her first husband, who was a traveling salesman, and so she really didn't like that. But what happened to her was a couple things that I want to mention because they are the negative things that really made Betty Ford what she became. The first one, she was opening a window during her first marriage, and she pinched a nerve in her neck, which gave her great pain, and the doctors put her on increasingly larger doses of medications. Now remember, she was very social and she used to drink. And when she mixed the medications with the alcohol, she became addicted. And she had to be confronted by her family. She had gone to the Long Beach hospital, but found that that hospital was really set up to serve alcoholic men. Addictive women were protected by their family in the home, typically at that time, and she started to think about a facility that would predominantly serve women. Serve men too, but she wanted something for women. And she really started to raise money for what they now call the Betty Ford Clinic in Rancho Mirage, California. It became famous immediately, and in the first year of its operation, 30 metropolitan areas called them to find out how to build something exactly like it. And a mile from here is the Women's Health Center, a 4-story masonry, beautiful building which serves the unique health needs of women. Then I Googled it and found that almost every major metropolitan area in this country has a women's health center. Never mind that there's no men's health center, guys. Like the coach says, we have to suck it up. But that simply speaks to her leadership, her vision, her courage. When she first told people that she was addicted to alcohol and drugs, she was an alcoholic, they were very critical because people just didn't do that time. They didn't admit, especially if they were the wife of the President of the United States. She did it. And it turns out people began to respect her, and she was asked to speak on these news shows. She did that, and she became so popular that when Jerry Ford ran for president, the buttons they used to wear politically said, "Vote for Betty's husband." So with those few comments, I want to make an analogy from history, from the Second World War, and then we'll close and dedicate this room. Before the Americans got into the Second World War, Mr. Avandoulis, Germany had really dominated Europe. They had defeated all the countries and subjugated them, and they won the Battle of France, and the next opponent, they thought the last one before they became world conquerors, was to defeat Great Britain. Germany, the Luftwaffe, their Air Force had 3,700 airplanes, bombers and fighters. And Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, was in charge of the army. He was convinced that air power was the only thing that could save Great Britain. But he did a couple things. He improved the training of his pilots. And while Germany had 3,700 airplanes, the Royal Air Force only had 700. But the other thing that Winston Churchill did is he mounted radar along the borders and along the English Channel of Great Britain. So they had superior intelligence, they had better trained pilots, and when Germany, the Luftwaffe, took off to bomb Great Britain, Winston Churchill knew it. And these brave young Royal Air Force pilots took to the air, and in 2.5 months of fighting, calling it the War of Britain, Great Britain, make a long story short, the British defeated the Germans, sent them back home defeated, and even when America did enter the Second World War, Great Britain was never threatened again. And some historians have said, if Great Britain had not won that battle, we'd probably all be speaking German today. So my point now is, Sir Winston Churchill said one thing to the people and to the world. He said, never before in a time of conflict have so many owed so much to so few. The Royal Air Force, of their 700 planes and pilots, lost just over 200, whereas the German Air Force lost almost 1,900 planes. So having read the life story of Betty Ford, how she started the clinic, how it serves so many people, and how it's being replicated all over the country to serve other people, I guess I would just like to say about my respect for her that never before has one person done so much for so many. And with that, in addition to Dr. Greg Forbes unveiling this plaque, when I first came to Central, I had a first-year teacher named Shirley Schreiber. She spent 42 years here. She was one of my absolute favorites, and my son had her. I think, again, he learned more than I did, but Shirley's here, and I'd like to have her come up and tell you where this plaque that we're going to unveil is going to be mounted. Shirley? And ladies and gentlemen, while Shirley is coming up, I want to introduce you to Dr. Greg Forbes, who lives in Kent County, and he will help me unveil this, and I think he's going to say a couple words.
You want to unveil first, and then?
It's up to you.
Let's go over and do that
I
first.
try not to make decisions.
Yes, I'm making a decision. Come along, let's.
You have permission.
Thank you all. I can't tell you what a great honor it is to be here today. What a wonderful event to see all these happy faces and listen to all the memories. Just a wonderful thing. I'm a lifelong resident of Grand Rapids. This is the town that Uncle Jerry and Aunt Betty referred to as home. When they lived in Vail, Colorado, and when they lived in Palm Springs, they always talked about home. Even my cousins, their kids refer to Grand Rapids as home, and they never lived in Grand Rapids. It's just so cool to be anywhere where we can celebrate together what's great about Grand Rapids. I would tell you all the things that Aunt Betty did. Many of you know those things, and especially here at Central High. She was involved in the Vaudeville Club for 4 years, the French Club, Entertainment Committee, Junior Class Treasurer, and Senior Class Monitor. As we've already heard, after she graduated from Central, she went on to a dance career. After that, she came back to Grand Rapids and married a young attorney and had a fairly eventful life after that. Dance and the performing arts were always really important to Aunt Betty. One of my fondest memories was watching Aunt Betty dance with Bob Hope at DeVos Hall when we dedicated the Ford Museum back in 1981. That memory of her smiling face and just enjoying every minute of being on stage and dancing is burned in my memory. It is a wonderfully fitting tribute to have this auditorium named in her honor. When I think of the students who have and will utilize this stage to perform, to learn, and to dance, I picture Aunt Betty smiling with gratitude and with joy. On behalf of the entire Ford family, especially my cousins, Mike, Jack, Steve, Susan, thank you for a fabulous tribute. We really appreciate your willingness to honor Aunt Betty this way. May God bless each one of you. May God bless this wonderful reunion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You want to say something? That's good. Get right behind the mic.
Pat Sandro was one of my first students and asked me to do this, and you just can't get rid of me at Central High School. The plaque will be placed outside the auditorium so that we can always see and remember what a great day this was today as we honor Betty Ford and as we honor all of those who have walked the halls of Central High School and have had such wonderful memories. Thank you.
During our committee members, our meetings, we didn't know whether to call her Shirley or Mrs. Schreiber. We were all confused. And there's a lot of them just went, so that's the way. Please welcome Dustin Gill, the principal here at Central High School.
Thank you very much. This is an exciting time. I had a chance to stand in the hallway and listen to some wonderful stories, and I really wanted to come up and really just tell you a couple of things. One, welcome back to your high school. I think it's great to see you in the halls and telling these stories that we all get to enjoy. I'd also like to thank the committee. They came together, I would say, for about 8 or 9 months, once or twice a month, and took the vision that they mentioned earlier and made this happen. And it was really exciting to see from those first meetings where it was just a discussion to an actual event. So I'm really excited that everybody's here and gets to experience high school again in a sense. Also, I wanted to make sure that I told you, because this has come up in the hallway already, Central High School is not closing. Central High School is not closing. We talk a little bit about the next chapter and what's going to happen as school changes. And school has changed a lot. School's not the same as when I went to school, and it's not the same as when you went to school in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But we still have children here on a daily basis that we are preparing for college and for work in a variety of ways. And they're going to continue to walk the hallways. And I'll tell you what, for the oldest operating high school in the state of Michigan, I think this place looks pretty good. And with the bond money that our voters passed recently, we expect that it's going to continue to be warm, safe, and dry, and continue to provide our students with a quality education. It's been mentioned already, and I kind of want to leave with this last thought. Although it's a great building, it's not the building that makes Central High School. It's the students, it's the teachers, it's the alumni that come back and share these stories. It's all of us, and that was referenced earlier. And I thought, boy, that's putting it right on the nose. That makes the high school experience. Thank you for coming today. It's great to see you. I would love to stay and chat, but Esmelda has given me some dirty looks because we have prom tonight. So once we're done here, once I'm done speaking, I have to get in the car and drive over to where we're having prom over at the KISD. So some of you might remember prom. It's kind of important. Kids really look forward to it, and they're going to have a great time tonight. But thanks for coming. My office is always open. Our door is always open. If you want to come in and talk, if you want to come in and visit, if you have a question, please call, please come in. We will do anything we can to take care of you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a beautiful musical presentation. Please welcome Kathy Lamar.
You think I know how to do this, but I don't. Thank you. Sorry about that. You would think I'd know how to just push the button and turn it on, but you know. It is really a privilege and a pleasure and a blessing to be here with you all. I graduated in 1976 from Central High School, yeah. Go Rams, still. There are places I remember all my life. Though some have changed, some forever, not for better, some have gone, and some remain. These places and their moments, oh, the lovers and friends I still recall. I know that I will always think about them, but in my life I love them all. Out of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compared to you. These memories lose their meaning when I think of a love as something new. I know I'll never ever lose affection for the people and friends that went before. I know that I will always think about them, but in my life I love you more. Though I know I'll never ever lose affection for the people and friends that went before, know that I will think about them in my life. I love you more in my life. I love you more. Thank you. Thank you. Bob Van C on the keys.
That was beautiful. If that didn't make you get warm and fuzzy on the inside. I just want to let everybody know that we're going to have a reception for the alumni. It is in the old gym. I call it the sock hop gym. And if you're down in front, you can exit through this door right here, and you'll find your way that way. Or if you're up there, down the hallway, and come around. Just a couple more things. In your program tonight, you saw an envelope, and please consider a donation for whatever amount to help pay for the celebration. And I want to just say a special thanks to Mr. John Hemholt. John, I don't know where you got the patience to work with us. I have no idea, but thank you. And to the committee who literally spent, if I said a couple of $100, I'm really shortchanging them because there's a lot of time. And thank you to all of you for coming here and celebrating with all of us. You're all dismissed. Thank you.